Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Jeff Hiles. Welcome to another beautiful episode of the Powerful Mindset interview series. Today, I have a new friend of mine, Danny Mulvihill. And let me just give you a little story on how this happened. A couple weeks ago, my daughter was in a rock band camp. On the last Friday, she wanted to go early to meet her friend um, at a coffee shop, and then her father was going to walk him to their camp. So I was expecting, I have my work to do. So I was expecting to do some work as they're talking, and then I was gonna just let them do it and go back. So I come in, this handsome, smiley gentleman comes in, sits in front of me, and says hello. And I just like this guy's energy. So I said, let me enjoy this conversation. We had a nice conversation. That Friday, our both of our daughters were in a rock concert together. They performed together. They sang together. They did a fantastic job. We enjoyed it. We spent time with Danny and his family, chatted, enjoyed the conversation, got to know each other, their background, and so just by habit, we end up having a barbecue at our house the next day. Spent a good 4 to 5 hours. Took our kids swimming. Had a wonderful time. And Danny and I had a chance to sit down and talk and really get into it. And what I realized is that we had a lot in common in terms of we kind of have a nomadic background of where we've lived.
Yep.
We kind of both have a sense of adventure, and we're both into personal development in our own way, in our own area. So I thought he would be an absolutely perfect guest for our Powerful Mindful interview series. So Danny, I want to say welcome to the Power Mindset. Please tell us your story.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, and I'll concur on everything you said. Chance meeting, but those often can turn into cool experiences, and that was very true in our case as well. So, my story. I don't know why. I've thought about this a little bit throughout the week of, where I want to start. And every time I consider that, I keep going back to when I was 6 years old. And it was the end of the school year, kindergarten. I'm walking down the hallway with my teacher. I think like the whole class went to the library or something, and we're returning back to the classroom. I was at the front of the line, walking next to Mrs. Pothenroth, and I think just in passing to make conversations, she said, "So Danny, what are you going to do this summer?" And my honest reaction or my answer was just, "Oh, well, I think me and my mom and my little brother are going to go live with my grandma," implying my parents are getting divorced. And I don't think that's what she was planning to get into. And to be, I don't really remember where it went from there, but for some reason that always stuck with me. Maybe she did have some sort of reaction that burned that memory into me a little bit. So I start there because a lot of my life, I think, kind of unfolded, because of that. Growing up, we lived with my mom, and, she was a single mother the whole time, never got remarried when we were kids. We were poor, for the most part. And I know there's degrees of financial wealth and success and, the other end of the spectrum. So we were never like hungry or anything, but I definitely wasn't wearing the three stripe Adidas or getting the Massimo t-shirts and even JanSport backpacks. It was more of the budget friendly stuff. And so that's where life started. And I think the reason I wanted to bring that up is because something that's been true in my life that I've really just been learning to unpack and understand the last year or two is that I've never had a mentor. And I think they're so important. My suspicion is that I, like the way I want to say it is like nobody was ever good enough. I'm not quite sure. I think I need to develop that some more. But for whatever reason, not having my dad around a lot when we grew up, like we stayed in touch and we would see him and stuff, but he wasn't a big part of our lives. It just never occurred to me. I didn't take advantage of whatever opportunities presented themselves. I never really loved to coach in sports. I mean, I liked coaches, but I never really adopted one. Was like, okay, this is my guy. Like he's going to show me how to be in the world. I had a couple of uncles who were super solid guys, and they did guide me, but still never did anybody fill that father figure role. So we'll come back to like this will end up playing out more as we get into my story and like really into the mindset stuff later and how that plays into how we raise our children. So a few highlights worth mentioning just to make this fun and exciting. Let's see. I grew up through school. I got in a little bit of trouble here and there, but overall I was a pretty good kid. But then when I was 19 years old, some friends and I went to attempt to buy beer late at night. It did not go well. We attempted to steal it. I was arrested and I spent 67 days in jail.
Wow.
That was another big moment in my life that impacted so much of how I interact with the world. Like I ended up with a criminal record and I always ended up working at startups and small companies. I just never even thought I would be able to get entertained for a position at like a large tech company. The other big thing from that was the entire time that I was in jail, I never knew if I was going to be getting out in a couple of days or a couple of years.
Wow.
And that's like not knowing it's still painful to me to this day. Like when there's something in my life and like I just don't know what the time frame is, it's a struggle and I suffer.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Um, okay, let's see. Let's jump ahead a little bit. I was, let's see, it was 2008. I was traveling in Mexico alone, staying at a hostel, and I had met some guys there. I was hanging out front, waiting for them to kind of like get ready. I think they were taking care of some business at the front desk. And I saw a girl walking away across the plaza in a green dress. And I was attracted. And my initial reaction was like, I need to go talk to her. But I kind of, that meme where it's this woman and like you see all the math equations on her head, like she's thinking really hard. Like that was me. And like I'm like the angle, okay, boop, 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 boop. And I'm like, she is staying at this hostel. Like she must have left here. There wasn't anywhere else that she could have been walking in that direction. So I played it cool. But all day while I was out with these guys, I think we went to Isla Mujeres. I was thinking about getting back. Like I wanted to get back there and meet this girl. Um, sure enough, we returned that evening and I saw her sitting they had like a little internet cafe. I just walked up and said, "Hey, like, how's it going? Would you like to join us for a beer out front?" She said yes and hung out with us. I think we went out, like, explored some of the bars in Cancun. I gave her a piece of paper with my email address on it, like this big. And sure enough, a few weeks later, she emailed me. She was on her way to the States from Chile to go stay with her sister. And we stayed in touch, talked a ton that summer, and were married 5.5 months later. And you met her.
Wow.
That's my wife, Posse, or as she'll sometimes introduce herself, Alexa.
Wow.
Yeah. And life has unfolded a ton since then. That was coming up on 17. Well, actually, that was over 17 years ago when we met. Our 17th anniversary is coming up this year. Let's see. Okay, so I've gone in a lot of directions, but I wanted to like plant some highlights because these are pivotal moments that have taken place in my life that now feed back into what mindset means to me, how I interface with the world, and the things that go through my mind when I, encounter challenge or maybe talk through a friend or, potential client about the challenges they're going through. These are some of the experiences I fall back on.
Very powerful experiences for sure.
So from there, let's see. I guess it makes sense to kind of like talk about what I'm into and why we're having this conversation because it's not to talk about um, getting in trouble at 19 and spending a couple months in jail and everything that went along with that. Really, it's to talk about mindset. And so the things that I'm doing in my life right now that play into that, I mean, as you'll find, really, as we get to my definition of it, everything is through this lens of mindset. The thing that's most relevant, though, is I'm transitioning out of my tech role to move more towards really men's coaching. I I have a deep resonation or like I really resonate with working one on one with men who want to get closer to their emotions. The way that I usually think about that is I was very good at not getting emotional through most of my young adulthood and even as a kid. And I always thought of it as a superpower. Like, oh, I can't, I'm stoic and emotions don't overwhelm me. I'm in control. And maybe 5 years ago, I started to recognize that it's only a superpower if you can control whether that happens or not.
Mm,
And I didn't, it was just on my ability to disassociate from powerful emotions. I couldn't modulate that signal. It was just not there. And as I dug into that, I realized like I couldn't cry. I would, it was, it was so foreign to me. As I started to unpack that in my own personal development, my life's gotten a lot more interesting. And I feel like I experience a lot more of the world now that I've started to invite some of these other emotions in, whether they be what we often consider the negative ones, or even, the good ones. So I've said a lot, and I want to make sure I don't just like talk and talk and talk. And I
no,
want to give you an opportunity to reflect on some of that and let me know where you want to go from here.
okay, I'm gonna ask you to connect some dots.
Hmm.
All right. So how did the tech world come about? Because
Mm.
at one point you're in jail and then you're getting married. How did your interest in it? How did you get into this tech world?
Sure. So I think around the time I was in seventh grade, I always liked computers and thought they were cool, but also not having a ton of money and this being the 90s, like we didn't have one at home. But I have an uncle who was also in tech and he upgraded his computer and he sent me his old one. And I remember in the process of shipping, it got jumbled around a bit. And after I plugged everything in, it wasn't working. I called him up. I'm like, hey, Uncle Rich, like, thank you. This is amazing. But like, it's not working. And he's like, okay, let's talk through it. And so within the first 30 minutes of me having my own computer, he had me go into the BIOS and take like this was so old, like it wasn't even a tower computer, like it laid flat. It like was more like if you tilted a tower on its side, right?
Right, right,
So I
right.
took the cage off and everything, and it ended up just being in the shipping, some of the RAM modules got unseated. Pushed those back in there, and boom, we had my computer working. And I was just fascinated by the fact that I fixed that, obviously with his guidance and help, but it felt, I don't know, really cool. I felt powerful and excited. And so from that point on, I was like, okay, I love computers. I'm into them. And was always, they came naturally to me. I took a couple of, like I think Q basic programming class in high school, but I was also a bit of a, I mean, I got in trouble. I was kind of a dumbass, so I didn't stay too focused in high school. And eventually, I went to college. I was all over the place. It took me nearly 8 years to finish my bachelor's degree. And maybe we'll dig into that a little bit more later. But in the last, probably my last year of college, I was in a program called uh, Digital Technology and Culture, which is basically a liberal arts degree, but you get to do more stuff with computers, to be perfectly clear. And I was talking to a friend, just catching up, And I was like, what have you been up to? And he's like, I've been so busy the last, month or two. And this was 2007, 2008. And I was like, well, what have you been up to? He's like, well, I've been like working on this programming project, but in 5 weeks, I made like $13,000. And I was like, hold on, what did you just say? Because I was a college student barely making $13,000 a year with my
Right,
side
right,
jobs.
right.
And I was like, hold up, bro, what did you do? He's like, well, I do PHP programming. And I'm like, how do you spell that? Just kidding. I know it's just PHP. And so, I mean, the next day I went to the college admissions office and I was like, do we teach PHP here? And sure enough, I found a class where we did, started learning it. And then the capstone project for that program was it could be any sort of community sourced project. And the time that I took the class, it was to build a website for this local community organization. And there's only 6 of us on the project, and I was the lead programmer, the only programmer, really. And I just had a blast. It was so much fun. Like I got to really dig in. The website itself was a turkey trot fun run, and all of the money that was raised went to this program called Principals Checkbook, where they could, like the principals at schools could buy school supplies and things like that for youth, like kids that didn't have the money to do it. But we finished that project in August, and so there were still months left, before the turkey trot was happening. And I was like, "Hey, man, we can do a lot more with this, like I will keep working on this for you, totally for free. Like this is just fun to me, and it's a great experience." And built that up, and it ended up being, a successful website. I was able to change a few things so that he got a lot more of the money rather than like some of the tools we initially were using, it cost him like 10% would go to the service provider, but I integrated PayPal and got it down to like 3% or something. So it was cool and I loved it. And then I just started getting, I graduated with my fancy liberal arts degree, and far and away the most valuable skill I had was web application development or websites. And I was like, well, let me do that. I loved it. It was fun and it felt like it would be a lucrative path to take. And that's how I got into tech originally.
And so did you get hired right away or what happened? What happened professionally after that?
Yeah, so another guy in the area, he heard about this college that would build websites for people. And so he approached the program director and was like, hey, I need a website. But he had like a business. It was a carpet and window cleaning company. She's like, cool, but we don't just build websites for businesses, like this has to be a community organization or something like that. But I have this student who just graduated and like he just built this, you should talk to him. And so I met with that guy and talked to him about what he wanted to build. Told him like I can absolutely do this, and I wrote up a proposal and pitched in the deal. I think it was 2,500 bucks to build him a website, and yeah, did that. I'm We moved to Reno, and I finished up the website there, and then I was like, okay, now what? So I just started looking for jobs doing anything with web development. And having those two projects was key to getting hired because like I didn't have a computer science degree, but
You
I
had real
did,
life success.
yeah, I did individually build two functioning applications and I could talk through exactly how I did it. And that's the cool thing about software development is you can, as long as you know how to do it, I mean, that's a big deal, especially back when I was doing it. So yeah, I got my first gig doing that and then just kept, stayed in that industry, moved to Austin, got another job doing it. Um, yeah, and just kept going from there.
Fantastic. I want to revisit college. So we're gonna jump a
Okay.
little, and then we're gonna go to your family life. 'Cause I want to get deeper into that a little bit after as
Okay.
well. Post posse, we'll call it. Um, so tell us, 8 years in college,
Yeah,
what happened?
sure. So the reason I first decided to go to college, my friend Travis and I, we were like throwing parties. I mean, we were into like raves and stuff, and then we're like, we could do this. And so we would organize events at a bar, or we'd like rent out some venue because we weren't even 21 yet, and just like throw a party, charge people tickets, and hire DJs, and then people would come, and hopefully the math would work out that we would walk away with some money. And so, oh, and we were thinking about opening a clothing store because this apartment we were renting, it had retail space downstairs, and we are like, oh, that'd be so cool. And I was like, I need to learn how to do business. So I just signed up at my local community college, and I took business law, and I think I took like a HTML and JavaScript programming class, and one other like business class. I just looked through the whole thing and took the classes that seemed interesting to me. The idea that I would have to take, general type classes didn't even occur to me. I just started picking out whatever I wanted. And so that's part of how, it led to that. And eventually, within a few terms, I finally a counselor managed to get me into their office, and we're like, that's not how this works, dude. You gotta, there's a path you gotta take here. And by that, I liked learning. And so, but I didn't quite know exactly what I wanted to do. And I just kept changing my plan and my degree. Part of it was after about a year at the first community college, I learned about this audio engineering program at the other community college in my town at that time. And I heard good things about it. So I signed up for that. And that was actually just like a 1 year audio engineering certificate. It didn't turn into an associate's degree or anything, but that was a blast. I had so much fun in that program, but almost none of those classes really would carry over to a typical degree. And so, and once the certificate program was over, I was like, okay. And I moved to Portland, Oregon after that, kind of got settled, went to Portland Community College. Same thing. I still didn't quite know what I wanted to do. I had considered engineering, but I was still just taking general elective classes, really, like trying to get caught up on some of those things I hadn't done. Transferred to another community college. So now this is community college number 4 in Vancouver, Washington. That's where I actually finished an associate's degree. And it was an associate's of arts. So I still I hadn't been taking like all the math and science classes that one would need to get a bachelor's of science degree. And then by that point, it was, I think took about 4 or 5 years to get my associate's degree. And I wasn't taking college the entire time. There was one point where I think I took about a year off to just work a construction job. And then I was like, okay, I want to get a degree. So I enrolled at WSU Vancouver in Washington, not Canada. And then initially I was going to do a mechanical engineering degree
Hmm.
because engineering just seemed cool. At my construction job, one of the foremen was like, "Dude, you're a sharp kid. Like, why are you shoveling? Like,
Right, right,
go get
right,
an
right, right.
engineering degree, dude, and like you could like I'll hire you." I was like, "Okay, that sounds cool." But mechanical engineering is hard. And at this point, I'd already been going to school for 4, maybe 5 years, and I would essentially be a freshman. I was like, dude, I'm ready to be done.
Fair
So I
enough.
did one term, and luckily in that time, I saw a flyer in the school that was like, man, I don't remember what the heck it said, but it was like, come check out this demonstration, you know? And so I went to check it out. I must have said something about being related to music and dance. And I had like, had going to raves and throwing the shows ourselves. I was into electronic music, and I thought at least that kind of dancing was a lot of fun. So I go to check out this event at the school, and it was absolutely insane. So here's what they do. There's maybe a 12 by 12 grid set up in the room, and they have infrared cameras in each corner. And then you hold these two infrared emitters, basically, and it can track you through 3D space. And so you can
Wow.
like dance through this 3D space, and you could sort of program sounds into different coordinates. And I was like, that's the coolest shit I've ever seen. Like, this is the future.
Right, right,
So,
right, right. That's amazing.
I, yeah, so I talked to that program head and I was like, I'm fascinated. I want to join your program. Like, if we get to do stuff like this, I'm in. And so I joined the digital technology and culture program. And okay, so now we're finally catching up to like the last year, I started taking a few programming classes because of what my friend Drew told me, how much money he made. And and that was it. That's how I finally got through college.
And I say that to you, Danny, because I did my 4-year degree in seven.
So you know what it's like. It's just like
I
so
know
much
it, man. I
fun
know it. I
to
know it.
learn.
I ended up at 3 universities in Canada, and eventually I crossed the line. But I remember the feeling, the weight off my shoulders when I walk across the stage and got the diploma. Just feel like it's finally finished.
Oh yeah.
Um, no, that's an amazing story. Um, I want to jump into your family life. So you meet
Okay.
Poppy
Yeah.
because it's a very interesting story. Let the audience know how did your family life unfold in the different places you've been and the different type of lifestyles you've lived there.
Yeah. Let's see. Well, since we met in Mexico, both traveling alone, that had always been something that we wanted to do again. We're like, travel is cool. We want to do more of this. And I think especially because we met in that context, we really held on to that value. So yeah, we met, we got married. She moved up to Vancouver and lived with me. Like I mean, we met in May. She came to visit me September 2nd that same year, stayed with me for a week. I went back to Tahoe where she was 3 weeks later without really planning it. Like it had kind of crossed my mind, but I didn't have like an elaborate will you marry me thing. We were just like, hey, we really like each other. How are we gonna continue this? And I was like, and the other thing was she had a 6 month visa that was about to expire. And I was like, well, I guess we should get married. I was like, uh,
It's not a bad idea.
the
What do you
the way
think?
I describe it too is like she kind of blue screened. It was almost like her brain shut down. And it was the longest, probably 10 seconds, but felt like minutes of my life where it was, she was, okay, rebooting, processing this information. And similar to, I mean, yeah, yeah. I was like, let me try that again. Will you marry me? She's like, yes. So, and I mean, this was so new. I remember calling my mom the next day and like, hey, mom, remember I came to visit this girl I told you about? She's like, yeah, yeah, how's it going? This is on speakerphone. I'm like, so we're getting married. Dude, silence again.
The blue screen twice.
Yeah. I'm
Everyone's
like,
malfunctioning.
oh, is her response. And, we kind of fumble through the rest of the phone call. I'm like, she's like, when? Like 3 weeks. She's, and like, it's gonna be in Tahoe. And she's like, I don't even know if I can get off of work, And I'm like, well, I'd really like you to be there. It's happening, you got to be there. And sure enough, she did. She made it. But so yeah, we got married. And here's an interesting thing that happened is so, you know, 6 months after meeting each other, we're living together. And the thing that I want to express is, I wouldn't encourage people to just like go get married. Don't dive into things. But there is something magical that happens when you are fully committed to something. And the way I would describe it is I've always been a reader and loved reading, and it's my preferred way to learn things is to read a book. And she just didn't read. at all. She's just like, no, I don't read. If we were dating, I think that I would have been like, oh, cool. Well, like you're hot and like we can continue this, but like I would have like crossed off the marriage material, like, but I was like, well, I guess, I guess she doesn't read, you know?
Too late
So
now.
yeah, that's just, okay. And as it turns out, the beautiful thing there is now she probably reads more than I do. She's a
Wow.
more avid reader than I am, so that worked out, fortunately. So let's see. Yeah, I mean, we struggled financially in our early relationship too. Just like I was going to college, she didn't have a work visa. So we're mostly living off my part-time job and, a little bit of student grant money and loan money, barely getting by. And after I finished college, we moved to Reno, Nevada, because her sister was down there and had like the reason she was on her way to the States is her sister was having a baby and she wanted to be there. And so at this point now she's a little over a year old and we're like, well, let's move there. We want to see this kid grow up. We moved to Reno and that's when I got my first official software developer job. And by then we had completed all of the USCIS process so that she at least like had a green card, like she could work in the United States legally. She got a job like at a sports bar and was just making like her sister was the manager there and so she got hooked up was like it was a decent gig for like waitressing, but not a dream job. And the first job I got was also it sucked. I had to like dress nice and I was a software developer. So I would wear, like slacks and button-up shirts and stuff. And we didn't have customers coming to the office or anything. It's just the owner was kind of a weirdo and wanted us to dress nice. And there's a lot of issues with that company. And ultimately, after 8 months or so, the only thing we liked about Reno was still our niece and my wife's sister and her husband, Chris. Like we made a few friends and stuff, but we're like, this place is not for us.
Right.
And so without ever having been to even Texas at all, Austin was on our radar, and we just decided we were going to move here. So we started the process, moved down here in our, I don't know, 1997 Honda Accord with no air conditioning and a leaking moonroof, and arrived in Austin. I I got another job as a software engineer, and but the call to travel, kind of kept coming back. But we did not too long after arriving here, she got pregnant, and our first daughter, Amaya, was born in 2011. So, that was, we had to we couldn't travel right away yet. I was developing my career. When we moved to Austin, we made this agreement like, no more jobs that we don't like. And she just, I still really liked programming. I loved it back then. And so I was stoked on my work and making enough. And she just kept getting terrible jobs.
Right.
She'd do the job like a few weeks in, we'd be like, dude, this sucks. Like, quit. That was the agreement we made. And after two or three of those, we found out that she was pregnant, and we're like, well, dude, let's do that. Raise our kid. We can do this financially. So that's what we did. And but eventually the call to travel did come back up, and we started putting the pieces together to do that. And I remember, so this is 2014, and so remote work wasn't quite as popular or ubiquitous as it is now. But I was doing the technical interviews at the company that I worked at, and we were having a really hard time hiring people. Probably because, partly like we weren't paying enough, in my opinion. Like there were a lot of other competitive jobs where people could go. Our strategy a lot of times is like find somebody like sharp, but that's not very experienced yet so that we can like train them up. And
Right.
it hit me one day. I'm like, And the software that we used was it had a really steep learning curve. It was it took a while before you could really understand how to work with it, and we would build custom projects for clients using the software. And then one day it hit me. I'm like, well, dude, I'm really good at this software. Like I've been doing this at that point, maybe 2 years or something. So I was great at it. Um, and I'm like, well, if I wanted to work remotely, I mean, they'd have to say yes, right? Because we're already struggling to hire new people. They can't lose me. They got it. So I just pitched it. I was like, hey, we want to travel and I want to work remote. And what do you think? It seemed like pretty quickly, I think they're like, let's think about it. But within a day or two, they're like, sure, let's do it. But we want you to be a contract worker instead of full time, because the complications of you being out of the country and a full time employee. I was like, okay, sure, we start talking about pay. I had one number in my head, and then the number they threw out was like way higher than that. And I was like, I wish I was smarter and I would have been like, oh, how about this much? But I
Right.
just kind of jumped at it. I was like, okay. So I ended up almost making twice as much as I was
Uh,
working remotely. And so that time we flew into Quito, Ecuador. Our daughter Amaya was 2 at this point, and we just showed up with backpacks and a 2-year-old. And we just started traveling around. We stayed in Quito a couple of weeks, went through mostly, and we spent a lot of time exploring Ecuador, then made our way into Peru. And by the time we got to Lima, it had been 2 or 3 months of backpack traveling, and we were ready to chill a little bit. It was it was tough. So we found an apartment in Miraflores in downtown Lima, like this, pretty nice area, a lot of expats there. And yeah, so then but
I know
my work kind of
Miraflores.
started. Go ahead. What's that?
I know Miraflores. I've been there before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. But like I mentioned, I was a contract worker and I was mostly working with one major client and that work kind of started drying up. And I think they had filled a few of their other roles. So I was getting less and less work. And so I started looking for new roles. Interview would go great. And then they'd find out I was in Peru and their interest would like kind of plummet at that point.
Fair enough.
So we ended up we moved to West Palm Beach. Once again, I'd never been to Florida in my life. Neither of us had. Well, she had stopped in Miami, like on a vacation one time. We moved to Florida, lived there for like 6 months. Let's see, moved back up to Spokane, Washington, got pregnant again with Kylie, and then we ended up moving back to Chile. And our plan was actually to like relocate to Chile. So when she was still 6 months pregnant, we moved down there. And a few months later, our second daughter Kylie was born in Santiago, Chile. We made it about 6 months before we finally had the realization at that point, like I love Latin America and I want to live in a first world country. I don't like it when it rains and the power goes out, or it's just,
Especially in tech.
yeah, exactly. The internet is always choppy. It just was, we're like, "Dude, what are we doing, And we moved back to the States. We bought a house and we really tried to go all in on like being normal. And about a year into living in our house, we got this idea in our head that we should build a schoolie, which is like a school bus turned into an RV. So we went to Seattle for a Coldplay concert, checked out some buses, and bought a school bus. Drove it home and just started building that. We built it in our driveway for like 8 months, turned it into an RV. Incredible, like probably still to this day, the most challenging long-term project I've like ever taken on was building that bus. Because it was a yellow school bus with seats and everything the day we bought it. and we turned it into a pretty sick home on wheels. It's 36 feet, like full size. Um, and then we lived in that for a year and a half and traveled around the Western United States, Baja, Mexico for 3 months. And I'm just gonna like kind of fly through this. We ended up building a van after that. Didn't work out quite as well. And we were ready to live in a building again. So that was the second time we returned to Austin, Texas. And that was like January 2nd, 2020.
Okay. So you're January 22nd, 27, but you're not done traveling yet.
Well, not, I mean, we'll never be done traveling, but that culminated most of our at least like long-term travels to South America. Since then, now I've done a fair amount of travel for work, and we like we moved back to Idaho of all places in 2023 because we were okay, so we're living in Austin and we're like, so are we gonna like live here? Live here? We should buy a house. And I was just joking about, I'm like, well, we should just like move to Central America for a year and save up on 50 grand and we'll come back and have a down payment. And I'm like, wait, that's kind of a good idea. So that was the plan. We were going to move to Nicaragua, but I even stopped there on the way home from Medellin. Like I went to Medellin for a work trip, changed a few of my flights, stopped in San Juan del Sur, the town that we planned to go live in, checked it out for like a week, looked at places and stuff. And that was the plan, but it just things like obstacles kind of kept coming up, and we're not averse to challenge or obstacles, but sometimes you got a sense that it doesn't feel like this is the direction life is meant to go. But by that point, we were still all of the machinery was in motion to move. We had told the school that the girls were going to that they weren't going to return. We were leasing a place. We told them that we weren't going to renew. And we were just kind of like excited
In that
about the
mode of
prospect of
moving.
moving. Yeah, exactly. And then we ended up in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, which is, I mean, it's beautiful. I had missed the mountains for a long time, and we literally lived on a mountain in it was a beautiful house, like sick view. I was like, "Oh my God, this is." Every time I would drive home, I'm like, "Wow, I love this. This is so cool." But after within a year, we just were missing something, mostly community. We hadn't really found the same types of friendships that we had in Austin. I had identified a couple of like I was developing friends with men that I was like, this is a cool guy. Like I would develop a long-term friendship with this guy and was doing that. But my wife, she hadn't quite connected with somebody in the same way. And we had left all these amazing friends behind here in Austin. We would talk about them all the time. We'd be like, oh, I wish we could go hang out with Jade and Greg or Ana Paula and Alejandro. Like we miss our friend and our kids are friends. And we just ultimately decided that Austin was the place that we wanted to come back to. And we just got back 3.5 months ago. And gosh darn it, I really plan to stay this time, Jeff.
Listen, I'm not betting money on it.
I wouldn't either if I was you.
Danny, your story's absolutely fascinating. You could have a movie on it. Let's connect a couple more dots to you, then I want to lead you to your next part of your life.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely fascinated by the beginning of your life with your how it connects to your later part of your life.
Mm,
Because you started your story with your parents' divorce, which led to some sort of instability.
mhm,
You went to a place where you went to jail. You talked about how not knowing when the end was made you concerned about not knowing the end.
mhm,
And what amazes me about that is the courage you continuously took in your life.
Mm.
Because you took the courage, knowing the fact that you have this traumatic situation about not knowing the end, you jumped into a marriage not knowing the end, right?
Yeah.
Jumped to Reno not knowing the end, right? You jumped to Texas not knowing the end, right? You jumped to Idaho not knowing the end. You jumped to Chile not knowing the end. And you still had that courage despite your trauma.
Mm.
Just talk to me through that space, or you just didn't think?
Yeah. So,
Do you understand the connection I'm trying to make?
yeah. Well, I think, and I'll tell you what I hear and what I think about it. You're calling it courage, which thank you. I appreciate that.
To me, it's tremendous courage.
And, there's some courage wrapped in there, some bravery for sure. As I've reflected on how my life's unfolded and these decisions we've made and these adventurous things we've done, at least a part of that is an attempt to escape.
Interesting, fascinating take on it. Go ahead.
So when life isn't quite unfolding as I imagined, like, oh man, I wish that I was making more money doing this. I wish that we could travel more often. I wish that whatever the thing was, like, and maybe it's not even so much wishing for a thing or a situation, but this low level discomfort with life, this struggle with simply being present in the moment. And one way to overcome that discomfort, well, let's start with the normal ones we talk about: drugs, alcohol, food, all the addictions in the world,
That
right?
comforts.
Yeah, so those I've learned to have a lot more appreciation for drug use, abuse, any form of addiction, because these are the things that humans turn to, if you really boil it down, to stay alive. Especially, when people are getting into the hard drugs, their pain is so great inside
Takes that.
that they're willing to risk it all to escape that, even if it's for 30 minutes or 3 hours or whatever the case may be. And this isn't to say that I've never experimented or used and abused, like I've drank too much. I've experimented with lots of drugs, mostly psychedelics. And but my kind of go-to way to escape that discomfort was to plan out a grand adventure. Because boy, is that a good feeling. And part of my own, um, just whatever, something that like I'm still unpacking is I want people to love me. I want people to like me. I want to feel like I'm admirable. And I figured out that people think it's cool when you travel, when you do something adventurous. And so if I was starting to feel maybe not enough, we would come up with this big idea to go do something. And so, and I don't mean to say all of this to like swipe away like there is like authentic good things to like all the adventures we've taken, but underlying it in some way was this sense of not being okay with where I was just internally, if that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. It's a perfect segue to where I want to go next. Because you mentioned early on about not having a real mentor
Hmm.
and you're transitioning into a mentorship role in your new world.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that. Make that connection to me.
Okay.
And why did you decide to pivot this way?
Yeah. So just to recap for myself, we're gonna connect, mention, why I didn't have mentors, why whatever reason that didn't
Yeah,
happen.
yeah, or your thought around mentors and now going into
Hmm.
mentorship.
Yeah. Yeah. So my thought around mentors are it's it's like the cheat code. If you have the opportunity to learn from somebody that's a few steps or many steps ahead of you, there's almost no better, faster way to get to where you want to be. So then the question is, how did I miss those opportunities? As I've dug into it, what I've realized is coming back to what I said a moment ago, this need to be liked meant that when I was presented with what should have been an opportunity to obtain a mentor, I often would, and not consciously, try and make myself seem like equal. I wanted to be their friend and their equal. It was very hard for me to accept like the hierarchical aspect. And I've always had like this massive chip on my shoulder about authority. And so any sort of authority, like acknowledgement that like you have something I don't, was really hard for me.
Hmm.
And that's what I think got in the way of me ever allowing somebody to mentor me. Because when I look back, I can see lots of opportunities, lots of missed chances
Like in your tech world
to,
stuff.
oh yeah, like tech coaching, like sports, countless opportunities, even like the original best options. Some of my uncles, amazing guys who
Right.
would have happily taught me so much, especially at an early stage where it really would have had a big outsized impact. So now, interestingly, I'm moving into this role that could be thought of as mentorship, right? Which is like this coaching. And it's funny you say that because I was talking to, I think 2 days ago, a friend texted me and he said, "Hey Danny, I I stepped on the scale today. I weigh 250. This is the second time this has happened, and it pisses me off. I don't like it. I want to be to 220 by this date. Will you just hold me accountable?" And we get on the phone. I'm like, "Yeah, like of course. How can I help you?" You know? And do you want to go more in depth here? Because, there's to use like maybe Dwayne's phrase, there's like the protocol you're following, but this is like a negative protocol. Like you have this broken protocol you're following that's leading to these results.
Correct.
Underneath that, though, is a belief that drives those actions. And so, like, are you open to excavating that? Because if we can get there, then
You make some
the
profound
cor
change.
yeah, and the correct protocol will just manifest. It'll just appear. And and he's like, "Well, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. But what does this mean, Like, and so we were in this conversation of explaining like what is this type of work that I'm doing that I want to, work with you with. And he used that phrase mentorship. Like, is this like mentoring basically? And even now I'm like, that's not quite it in my mind. And maybe it's still this. I'm not a fan of hierarchy.
Yeah, I
And
think if you mentor someone who's done it before,
and like and especially like with the the weight thing, like that just hasn't been my personal struggle. So it's but what I have done, and maybe why this mentorship notion does fit, is I've been in a place where I had beliefs that were getting in the way of me doing the things I wanted to do to get to where I want to be. And I've done work and learned practices and maintain practices that help me unpack that, get to the bottom of it, and in some ways, like modify and update those beliefs. And so I do feel, yes, I can mentor you in that and getting to the bottom of it. Like what could be driving this? Because it boils down to a few things for the most part, and yes, in that way, like I can mentor him. I just for whatever, like I'm having this reaction against the word because of the hierarchy introduces, and but that's not to say that your point is off. This is more of a something that I need to dig into more personally.
Oh, because it's fascinating to me because I mean, it's not to mention you can call it coaching, support,
Yeah, sure.
whatever you want. But to me, there's a direct link between your experience with the lack of it
Hmm.
going through your whole life, experiencing, which I think has been a fascinating, successful life, and then having an opportunity to kind of fill a role for someone who might need it. Am I
Yeah,
off
man,
base there?
no, I think you're actually connecting something that I hadn't even quite connected yet, which is that you're right. I think part of what drives me to want to do this is I finally realized how powerful mentors can be. And I can't think of anything more meaningful to do. Like, because you're right, I have built my life to a level of success where I am so incredibly fortunate that I actually get to sit down and ask myself, what do I want to do? Because it's not the thing, like, this isn't it. Like, there's something more out there for me. And when I ask that question, this is what comes up. And I think you nailed it. I think it's because I I didn't have it, and I wish I did. I wish I let those people mentor me.
It's fascinating because something that's coming up for me as well is when you left, or when you're right now, you're currently in a job that you, as from everything you've described in your career, you enjoy.
Mm.
It was like that you've had a passion for that you found that was fun, that you could help people and feel fulfilled and be creative and solve problems. So it's
Yeah,
interesting that it's not like you hate your job,
right.
right? It's the fact that you enjoy this, that it fulfilled. Like when I try to direct kids in my program, I want them to say what you did. That I'm good at something that I enjoy, that I have a passion for. If you could, any kid could find that's fantastic. And I had the same thing when I left teaching, right? I
Mm.
loved it. I had a great job teaching great courses in a great school in Panama in the sun, and I just felt there's something more.
Uh-huh.
So I totally get it, which
Yeah.
is why I think it's something deeper that's driving it towards this direction. That the fact that your life is so good, beautiful wife, fantastic kids in a great city, the fact that you're still looking for something else, I think there's something deep driving it. And it's just something for, which is great because I think you'll get a lot of, I think you'll self heal
Hmm.
while you're doing your coaching, which I think is fantastic. So I'm going to ask you, my company is developing mindsets in young kids, right?
Yeah.
And what I mindset has a different meaning, definition to every person.
Hmm.
So I just want you, when you think of the word mindset, and you can go on and connect it to your life and how its role is played if you want to just continue on, if you're on a roll. Um, what does mindset mean to you personally? Like, how do you define it? And what role has it played in your life?
Yeah. I mean, I like the idea of just like, let me attempt to just define it, and like if a potential client asks me that, what does mindset mean? The way that I would start to go about it is to say, your mindset is sort of your interface to the world. So,
Technology, I like it.
yeah,
Terminology.
exactly. So to use like a programming, metaphor, the whether something good or bad, a situation is coming in, my mindset is the way I interpret that. And so if I have a growth mindset and I'm presented with a challenge, then the way I interpret that is okay, like, how do I break this down into a small problem so that I can incrementally improve? And if I have, like, what does Carol Dweck call the a fixed mindset?
Mhm.
Then if I encounter something that is hard, I get scared of it. And I unconsciously think, how do I avoid this? So the key another key component I'd like to add to it is I think of mindset more like software, right? Like my brain is the hardware and the mindset is something that it must evolve over time. Like nobody wants to be running Windows 95 right now. Like, dude, let's upgrade that. No. And so sometimes, you need to do a full install or reinstall. Like, okay, like, why I picked Windows. You upgrade to the various versions of Windows, or maybe someday you're like, man, Windows isn't working for me. I'm gonna I'm gonna try Mac OS. Maybe someday you're like, dude, Mac is great, but like I really want full control. I want to really fine tune things and have to write my drivers to watch a video from scratch. I'm gonna install Linux or whatever the case is. The key thing is it's something that we can change over time. Like you can patch it. You can identify a bug in your mindset and through effort change it. Adjust that. And that's the way that I think through it.
So you have a wide-ranging life experience. You could talk to me about any part. If you want to talk about when you were a kid growing up, if you want to talk about your time in jail, if you want to talk about your professional career, if you want to talk about family as a father, what has mindset meant to you? And then as you speak, I'll ask some
Hmm.
deeper questions.
Sure. The one that's coming up for me that I think makes sense to talk about is my mindset as a father.
Okay.
Because I have a dad, and I know the guy. I I talked to him this year a couple of times, like he's not completely out of my life, but by those last few sentences you can start to grasp like we're not really close. And I think it's the absence of that closeness and that knowing that there's this man in the world that has my back. Like I know he's like got my back if he happened to be next to me if there was a problem, but he's not it doesn't occur to me to like call him when I struggle with something. And that that does make life hard. I wish that I had that. And so as a father, it's important to me to make sure that my daughters never even consider that. I want them to always know that there's somebody who has their back and who can help them solve their problems and even or not even like solve a problem, but like have fun with them. Like this would be more fun if dad was here. So, but raising kids can be hard. My daughters are 9 and 13 right now, and I'm I'm facing a lot of things that means. My our 13-year-old, she does have a phone now, and that introduces there's complexities there. Believe me, and even that I'm surprised. If you asked me 3 years ago, when will your daughter get a phone? And I would probably tell you 16 or 18. 16 at the earliest would have been my answer. But my mindset as a father means that I don't want to set hard rules like that. Like, oh, they'll have a phone at this age. I have to pay attention to what's going on. Like, why does she want a phone? Like, what are the reasons? Okay, these are what she tells me. What are the things that I observe? And what are the parts about this that I don't understand that like I can't possibly see because I'm looking at it through my lens and she's looking at it through hers. And I have to be able to reevaluate those things and sometimes fine tune and make adjustments. So we're still like figuring that out and the limits and what that entails. I also sometimes it's just here's a way to put it. My friends and a guy who I do have a mentor, by the way, now. He doesn't know it yet, but like there's a guy in my life who like I look up to a lot. And when he tells me to do something or to read something, I just do it without even thinking about it. Um, he recently said to me, our partner, the person that we marry, it seems as almost they're perfectly designed to trigger us in every way that we need to heal. And
Very
our kids, they get into little nooks and crannies that like, the broad strokes of our partner interfacing with us missed. And sure enough, my daughters will do things sometimes that just irritate me beyond belief. Yesterday, like there was something that happened. I was just like in my head, I'm like, how do I handle this? Like, how do I deal with this? But my mindset as a father is, you know, you you handle it, man. You figure out how to do it. And if I don't have a good way, then I have to pause. Like, and I can't default to responding with anger and frustration. Not to say that I don't. I do sometimes respond with anger and frustration. But I do,
friend. We all do.
yeah. But I like my mindset is like, let me hold it back a little bit, and never do anything that can't be taken back. Like I got to at least be able to walk into their room 10 minutes later and be like, hey, I was being a jerk. I'm sorry. And so all the other thing that I think helps with this a lot and how I think about and what I encourage other men, fathers, and even other, women parents to do is having a community of people that can help you answer your questions about the best way to interact with our children. So that could be, you know, adult brothers and sisters we have that also have children, asking them, close friends that we've known that have kids. And beyond that, there's other community groups. Like I'm in a group called Front Row Dads that is massively up leveled my ability to be the best father that I can be because it's a group of 300 plus men who they're succeeding in life. They have businesses or careers, they're killing it on that front. And they want to prioritize their relationship with their children and their partners. And so having access to that group of guys, even if it's uh, like I'll have a question, I can just share it and ask for feedback. A lot of times I get so much value just seeing another guy ask his question and then seeing people answer that and thoughtfully think through it, or even sharing my own personal experience. And in the process of, it's like I'm sure you know this. So when you're teaching somebody something, there's this gap that exists between knowing how to do something and knowing how to teach it. And when you make that leap from knowing how to do the thing to teaching it, something happens that's magical there. And when I go through this process, like if I'm sharing my own personal experience, it can be powerful. I get better at it. And lastly, it's oh man, there was something about I wanted to say. That's okay. It'll come back to me in a moment.
What I think teaching does too is teaching challenges your integrity.
Ooh, I like that.
Do you know what I mean? Like if you're telling somebody like, you know what, this is a perspective that you can, this might help your situation. You're trying to give some a perspective. that makes you force like, are you doing what you just said?
Ah, yes.
Do you know what I'm saying? And so and I find that when I'm doing my power mindset, that happens a lot. When I'm telling kids to attack a problem with a growth mindset, am I attacking a problem with a growth mindset?
Dude, yeah.
I mean, am I allowing Dee Dee to work through her mistakes?
Hmm.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, and I think that challenge, and so when you're teaching something, you're seeing it from their perspective and trying to give an outside voice through your life experience. And sometimes your experience can be your mistakes, which is just as valid. Just give some a fresh eyes on the situation. But in that process of doing that, you feel empowered because you've assisted someone's life, but you've assisted your own life by making yourself look at like, hey, practice what you preach. You
Big time, dude. Yeah.
know, no, fascinating, fascinating, and I'm glad you took the father angle because it's really, really important and really, really powerful. Um, I want to go back to your coaching for a second.
Mhm.
You're in this new career. Just tell us. I want you to tell us two things. Where in the process you are in the career.
Mhm.
What do you want to get out of it?
Sure. Yeah, so let's start like the stage I'm at. Right at the beginning, man. I mean, I think anybody moving into this type of direction, it starts with doing a lot of work yourself. There's a lot of personal work that has to take place first. You can only really take somebody as deep, so to speak, as you've been yourself. And so I've been on that path myself, actually relatively focused since really 2020 is the first time I signed up for something where the goal was let me start to understand like what's going on in here and more importantly in here, and I'm covering my heart right now for some if anybody's not watching the video, because that's when I really started to see things differently. And so that thing I did was called the Hoffman process. It was a virtual version of it because this was like height of COVID, and so they weren't doing anything in person. I heard about it on a podcast. I was like, that sounds like something I need to look into. That kicked it off for me. I had taken, when I was in my, I don't know, 18, 19, 20s, I did a lot of, like, I mentioned the dance music and stuff. I experimented with psychedelics a lot. And then as I got into my career in adulthood, like, I just kind of, when we moved around so much, I just wasn't around the same friends and people that, uh, I knew back then. And so I had taken this big break from it. And then I started hearing more about psychedelic assisted therapy. And so I looked into that. And I remember I experimented with at-home ketamine therapy. And I remember sitting in my bedroom. This is in Austin, probably 2022. It's these lozenges you take and you gotta like swish them around in your mouth for 10 minutes or something to let them dissolve into your system. But I remember sitting on my bed like, wow, look how far we've come. I have sitting on my bed, I legally had psychedelic medicine sent to my home and I'm on my bed like using this with the goal of, you know, and understanding myself better and healing in some way. And then I in my own podcast, I interviewed a lot of people to learn more about it and what they were doing and their approaches and how it helped them. I went to Costa Rica for an ayahuasca experience, and
How was that?
that was my experience with it. So as I've returned back to leveraging plant medicines to try and heal myself in some way, there's a few things I'd say. First, they're not actually for everybody. So if anybody out there's like, oh, maybe that's not, it's okay. Like they might not be for you, and they might actually be really powerful. The thing they helped me out with the most is breaking through that armor that I had placed around myself that didn't let me access my emotions at all. And it's sort of like being able to practice experiencing tears and not being like ashamed of them. Just like letting it, the way that these medicines can drop away our inhibitions and all of our mental barriers is so powerful. And so they helped me with that a lot to be even able to talk out loud to a coach or a therapist about what I was actually thinking. Whereas before, I couldn't do it.
Even sometimes to hear your own thoughts is hard, right? To hear your own,
Yeah,
even to
definitely,
comprehend
man.
your own level of despair.
Yeah. And so what ayahuasca was like and so what I was going to say is for whatever reason, I've always been seeking this ego death experience that I've read and heard about so much. And you only ever hear about it like it's this powerful, amazing, life-changing transformation experience. Like, I went into the jungle, I did ayahuasca, I got back, I started my company, we did $1 million the next month. Like, those are the only stories you hear, right? It's not always that way. Those are, one in 1,000, one in 10,000 stories. But I was hoping that ayahuasca would be the thing that could really take me there. Like, I kind of wanted to lose touch with reality for some reason. I don't know why. And the first night we drank, I it was certainly a psychedelic experience, but I was almost a little let down. I was kind of like, huh, I really, I was there the whole time. And I don't know why, but I still, in some sense, crave this experience of like, what's that like to really have this full unity experience? 'Cause I haven't had it yet. So then I did a ton of work the whole next day. Like, okay, I guess everybody on the internet who was saying you have to surrender was telling the truth. And so I journaled my face off I wrote out this big thing about like I will surrender. I am able to surrender. I recorded it like on my laptop. I put music behind it. I listened to it probably 100 times. Like I programmed myself to be able and willing to surrender to the ayahuasca. So the second night we drank it, I got a lot deeper and a lot closer and still didn't quite fully like have that I mean, I don't know yet. I haven't had it, but it doesn't feel like I've had that ego death experience yet. And I had some realizations, but still nothing really. I didn't have that. My gosh, I see everything so clearly now. But some things did come out of it. And the phrase that I want to share most, and not to scare people away, because I think if you're looking to do something like this, if you're feeling called to do it, you should look into it more. It's important to have a good support structure. You should have people in your life that care about you, ideally like family members or really long-term friends who know that you're considering this, know why you're considering it, and will be there to support you like when you return. I wouldn't encourage people to go like do this without anybody knowing if they
Fair
can
enough.
help it. Because sometimes in this type of work, it can get worse before it gets better. And that was my experience. When I returned, it the next 6 months were probably some of the most challenging of my life. It was it created the most turmoil and ups and downs in my marriage. It's the it's the only time and the closest we ever got to being like, does this make sense anymore? That was incredibly disruptive and scary and it just forced really both of us to confront so much of like what is going on here? And is my gripe actually about you? Or is it just that you're doing a thing that like it's making me feel a certain way and that's what I don't like. Why does it make me feel that way? Oh, because, for example, my dad was not present when I was a kid, and that leads to some thing inside a young boy. So that's what ayahuasca was like. That you asked the question like, where am I at in this, process of making this transition to coaching? And so I've done a lot of personal work. The thing that's been the most powerful for me though over the past year is getting more into men's work and specifically like this topic that I like to call emotional mastery. And I get that phrase from a guy who I took a course from and have done some personal coaching with named David Sutcliffe. He teaches a course called Emotional Mastery for Men, and it's absolutely phenomenal. Like this guy is like a top five person in the world, in my personal opinion, for this. Like he's just his ability to like kind of see through your bullshit and call you on it in a supportive way and like not let you hide from it, but also not make you feel attacked is I don't know. I aspire to be as good as him one day at what he does.
Who mentored?
So I've done a fair like a lot of work on myself, and it's always a process that's unfolding. Like I have things on the horizon that I still plan to do personally. But I finished a 6 month men's coach training program a couple of months ago now. And so now the phase where I'm at is really, I'm still doing a lot of practice sessions with people. So when I encounter, luckily, I'm so fortunate that in my life, I've just developed a lot of friendships with men. And even they don't necessarily know what I'm about or what I'm into. Like they can be just acquaintances through jujitsu or I don't know, but somehow I'm exuding something that is telling them maybe I should talk to Danny about this thing. And it keeps happening. And when it naturally unfolds like that, I'm making the pitch like, "Hey, let's go deeper on this." And so that's where I'm at now. I plan to continue to dig into this with guys that are ready to go there. I don't I don't have an exact timeline. I'm going to continue to do that like at this point for free until I feel ready. There's probably going to come a stage where I am ready, but I don't feel like I'm worth it yet to charge people. And probably some coach or mentor in my life is going to have to tell me, like, okay, bro, it's time.
You know,
But that's where I'm at now.
you know what's interesting about that, right? Because you're looking at it in terms of what you think you can provide. You
Yeah.
got you got to reframe it as what's the end result worth to the person,
Mm, yeah.
right? So, and you're talking about you have this energy. You do. That's true, right? Like, because as you sat down at the coffee shop, I'm like, I like this guy. My wife, I'm like, I like this guy. This guy seems like this guy's got good energy. He's got good energy. And when you
Thank
guys
you.
came over, my wife was like, yeah, and I like Alexa too. She's got good. I love that family. They're welcome anytime. Is this you have a sense about you that's disarming, and that's you can't
Mm,
teach that.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You can't teach that. And for someone that has had your life experience, and you're not a social worker, or you're not in education or a nurse or a
No.
doctor
Mm,
where you're working with people, you work in technology, but you still have that energy about you. That's natural. So to me, if you can get somebody to disarm,
mm,
face what they're feeling, confront what they're feeling, make them go a step deeper, and have a clear understanding about it, you're worth as much as what worth you're worth as much as it will help that person move forward, which is
yeah. You're right, man. I like, and I appreciate you saying those things and acknowledging me in that way. I agree. And there's, it's scary to do something new, especially something so like raw like this, to look a man in the eyes and be like, I'm going to help you get in touch with your emotions. That's like it's kind of a big thing to say or to claim. And yet I, and so what I was going to say is like, sometimes I get a little, there, it could be a little uncomfortable, like leading up to a call or an experience. I'm like, oh, and then like most things, once you begin, it's like, oh my gosh, yes, like we got like I know what to do.
yeah. And I think you're not, and it's funny because I always think of it this way, right? When I look back at my first year teaching in the UAE,
Mhm.
dude, I was terrible, right? Like I was terrible. I still
Uh-huh.
got paid, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I actually got a Teacher of the Year award, right?
Maybe you weren't so terrible.
But when I look back at after training and after do my master's, I look back at who I was then to who I was now. I'm like, that, oh, what was I doing?
Hmm.
But you still provided value to those students,
Yeah.
right? And that's what so that's like, as you get more experience, your value will change, but you still have value, which is worth your time.
Absolutely, man.
You'll
And
get better every
yeah,
time. You'll
yeah.
get better. Like you'll get better every time, every conversation, every time. No matter even does it go well, you'll get better, right? You constantly get better. But
True.
as soon as if you're finished your training, there's going to be a first time. Just go for it.
Yeah, you're right, man.
Just go for it. I want to take this conversation in a different direction.
Okay.
Not a different direction. I want to kind of take it outside of your experience. And let's talk about mindset in 2025 in the world today.
Hmm.
You have two daughters, so this is something you have to confront, right? Are you concerned about the world that they're going to grow up in terms of developing a healthy mindset for your kids or for the world in general, for anyone's kids?
Man, it's so like as you asked me that question, this kind of voice inside just so loudly screamed like, "No, I'm not worried." Like, and maybe that sounds a little weird, but if there's one strength I've had, and I wish I knew where it came from, and I have it now, I always believe that things really are going to be okay. And I have a 100% record of things working out because I'm still alive, I'm still breathing, and and beyond that, like my life is pretty. I'm s- I'm very fortunate, and there will be parts I do realize there will be challenge in my life, and I realize there will be challenge in my daughter's lives. They're gonna go through things that I. There's obviously a part of me that wishes I could shield them from that pain of a breakup or betrayal, whether a friend or a romantic partner, um, some financial calamity. Like,
Not getting to
I
a
wish I could,
yeah.
and I can't. And it would be, that's like part of life. You can't experience joy as much. It's like a, it's like a sine wave. The amplitude, it's tied to how low you go and how high, like the other side of it. If life is a scale of 0 to 10, say, let's call it -5 to 5, where zero's baseline, kind of neutral, and -5 is like suicidal, or I don't want to talk about that, but like it's that bad, like where suicidal ideation like makes sense. This pain is so great, like I can't be here. And +5 is like top moments, like the birth of a child, the um, you know, meeting your loved, like your partner, your person, some success in sports, like some physical achievement. If you're only willing to go to like -1, -2 in life, you're going to be kind of limited, I think, on the upside. It's going to be hard to hit those highs if you shield yourself from all of the lows. And so their question was, how do I think about mindset in this world that we live in today? And specifically, what it's going to be like for my daughters to navigate it. Am I worried? Yes, like there's things. And so I'm giving you kind of like I don't know, a coachy answer, right? Like everything's going to be great. I do believe that. So now let me think about from a more practical, tactical standpoint. Yes, there are things that I'm concerned with. and it's like I can't help myself. I trust that we're giving them the tools to navigate it. We love them. They know it. We got their back. And sometimes they don't, I don't think they realize like how good they got it, you know? And I hope that every one of their friends comes from a great family who has parents that love them. That and this is so messed up, but there's part of me that hopes they have at least one friend who kind of had a little bit tougher than them so they can be like, "Oh, damn, mom and dad were pretty cool." Like, wow, thanks guys.
You know, it's a powerful lesson
Hmm.
of volunteering.
Ah, yeah, dude. That's a good.
Some
We
folks
haven't done
do
that in a while.
that with Dee Dee.
Hmm.
Couple for the winter break for the Christmas break. We went to deliver food in Panama.
Hmm.
The world just shook. She's like she had no clue that
Yeah.
they lived like this. You know what I mean?
That's a good reminder. You're right, man. Um, and that's a way that, something I can experience with them for
Yeah.
sure
It's
and be
good to
reminded
experience
of
with them so
myself.
you can discuss it with them, right? You can talk them through the
Yeah.
experience. Sure.
I love that.
Um, no, you're saying from a tactical perspective, I cut you off. Sorry, Danny, continue.
Oh no, I mean, let's see. What are the things? Social media that like pops up in my head, but I'm like, neither of our daughters have that yet, and still not ready to change that anytime soon. I think sooner than I really am comfortable, we might let Amaya have Snapchat because it's like the way kids communicate. And it's like this delicate balance of how much do I restrict and how much do I show her like I trust you. And like I can use social media too much. And so there's dangers here. And gosh, it's like I can't protect them from everything. And yet there's some things I have to protect them from. What else is there out there?
You
I
know,
mean, I guess there's the overarching thing of like, what kind of jobs are going to exist in the world.
good call.
Uh, I I don't think it's. I think they're going to be fine. Um, we I encourage them to like we have a family ChatGPT account and they're encouraged to just use it and try it. Like if they have a question, I'm like, dude, ask ChatGPT, like
That's
talk through it. And when they're back in school in a few weeks here, if they have papers they need to write, like we'll talk to them about it. Like obviously you can't use this to write your paper, but you can use it to, be like, hey, is this like forming a coherent point? Like how could I improve this? And we really encourage them to think about making money from as an entrepreneur, like start a business. And so I think they'll be okay with the jobs. What about, so this is my kids though. And I have high confidence because I know we're trying really hard, but there are kids out there that maybe are in a different situation. And in that case, programs like yours where you're teaching kids mindset, like these are that's really how you beat the problems in the world is your mindset. If you have a growth mindset and some tools to face challenges, then it's just a video game.
I totally
And
agree with that.
yeah. So, man, I'm just gonna keep mumbling and rambling on if I can't seem to come up with something I'm really, really
No,
worried
that's
about.
that's perfectly fine. That's your answer is perfectly fine. Let's leave it at this. Dan, we've been going for a while.
Yeah.
If you had a message to my power mindset kids, which hopefully your daughter will be part of them soon,
Yeah.
what would be your message to them? What would you be your parting words of wisdom, of mentorship?
Hmm.
to a group of kids looking to make it in this today's world?
Let's see. Hmm. I'm gonna think for a minute because I really want to see what comes up from my intuition. Hmm. But something that will actually land with a kid. Like I want to say, you're loved, but they're gonna be like, "Pff, what a dork." That doesn't land for me. And so, hmm. Ah, learn to pay attention to your intuition.
I think that's brilliant.
And if you heard that and you're like, what does that mean? Like, learn about it. Ask ChatGPT. How do I learn to pay attention to my intuition? And just try things out. Here's what I'll tell you. If you just shut up for a second and stop trying to have an answer for everything and you listen, there's something there. And sometimes it's just a spark. But if you pay attention to that and you practice paying attention to that, man, so many answers are just like right there inside of you.
Well, Danny, that's a brilliant way to end this. I want to thank you so much for your time. I'm looking forward to joining you on your podcast.
Yeah.
And I'm all my guests I've had on this year, I'm going to have them back to talk about habits. So
Okay.
I'm going to welcome you again if in a couple of months, if you'd like to come join me again and address my power mindset community.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for this. It's been wonderful. Till next time, everybody.